Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah ma ba'd. In our last week's session, we covered the tafsir of ayah number 19 and ayah number 20. In ayah number 19, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَاءَتْ سَيَّارَةٌ فَأَرْسَلُوا وَارِدَهُمْ فَأَدْلَى دَلْوَى. That a caravan came by and they sent their water carrier. And as this person approached the well and he lowered down his bucket, when he pulls up the bucket, what does he see? Instead of water, he sees Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So he very happily and excitedly exclaims, Ya bushra hadha ghulam. Oh, good news, this is a young boy. And he says this and he's happy, not because he has found a lost child and now he can return him back to his parents, but because he has found this boy and now he can sell him as a slave. As we mentioned, in those days, slaves were considered to be a very expensive commodity. And obviously he's a businessman, he does not have any moral values. He's concerned more about money, he's a businessman. And this is what happens when a person, when he runs after money, greed is what blinds a person. So he's not so much concerned about having found a lost boy. He's happy because now he can make some money. وَأَسَرُّوهُ بِضَاعَةً. So they hid him as merchandise. Okay, Wallahu alimun bima ya'malun. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was well aware of what they were doing. He knew that what they were doing, they knew whatever they were doing was wrong. And we also mentioned last week, in our Sharia, this is also considered to be a major sin, to actually take a free person and then sell him as a slave. And we talked a little bit about slavery last week very briefly. In ayah number 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودًا. They sold him for a miserable price. دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودًا. Few coins which can be counted. وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ. And they were not very eager concerning Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. They were not very interested regarding him. In other words, they did not place much value on who Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam was. Now, this could either be a reference to the brothers or it could be a reference to the people in the caravan. Who were the ones who did not place much value on Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam? Was it the brothers or was it the people in the caravan? We mentioned last week that there's both opinions, both interpretations, and both of them are correct. The ayah could mean both things. It could either be that it was the people in the caravan that sold Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam and they did not place much value on him. They sold him for a miserable price. Why? We mentioned last week because he was stolen merchandise. And usually when you get something for free, you don't have much value for it. That is just human psychology. So وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ could be a reference to the people in the caravan. Or the second meaning is وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ, that the brothers were the one who sold Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is also the opinion of some mufassirin, that it was the brothers who came back, took Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam and sold him to the caravan that was passing by. This is the opinion of some scholars, and this is also the biblical narrative as well. وَكَانُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الزَّاهِدِينَ would then mean that the brothers of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam did not place much value on him. They sold him for a miserable price because the whole point was not to make any profit. It was for them to get rid of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Today inshallah we'll start with ayah number 21. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الَّذِي اشْتَرَاهُ مِن مِصْرَ لِامْرَأَتِهِ أَكْرِمِي مَثْوَاهُ عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. And the one who purchased him in Misr said to his wife, أَكْرِمِي مَثْوَاهُ, take good care of him, or make his stay comfortable, عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. Perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a child. وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And this is how we established Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam in the land. وَلِنُعَلِّمَهُ مِن تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And so that we may teach him the interpretation of events. وَاللَّهُ غَالِبٌ عَلَى أَمْرِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has full control over his affairs. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most of mankind do not know. So now, here we now move on to a different scene. Okay, basically a different episode begins. Okay, so we leave Canaan, we leave what is called modern day Palestine, and we now move to Egypt. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention all of these details because as we mentioned, all of these details are understood. Okay, we know that obviously he's picked up by the caravan. then obviously travel a very long distance. It's a long journey. They come to Egypt. They put him in the marketplace. The minister, he's passing by, he sees Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and then he purchases him. So all of these details are not mentioned. All of this is understood. So the one who purchased him in Misr, who was this person? Later on in the story, he is known as Al-Aziz. Okay, this is the title that is given to him. Al-Aziz simply means the honorable man. And this is also the same title that is given to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam towards the end as well. He is known as Al-Aziz. And we know that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he becomes the Minister of Finance. So there is this indication that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam perhaps takes on the role of his master. So he says to his wife, Akrimi mathwa, make his stay comfortable. Okay? That don't treat him like the rest of the slaves. Give him everything that he needs. Take good care of him. Don't give him hard work, just like the other slaves. Why? He mentions two reasons. عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. Perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a child. Okay, we can adopt him as a son. So he mentions two reasons. One of them is that we might adopt him as a son. Some of the scholars have said that perhaps this couple did not have any children and they wanted to adopt Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. That was number one. The second reason he mentions is عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا. Perhaps he might benefit us. So he saw something in Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam that was above and beyond the ordinary. He saw something amazing in Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and he specifically gives this instruction to his wife. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, who is a famous companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said there were three people that excelled in firasa, okay, that excelled in in farsightedness. We talked about the concept of firasa before. Firasa is the ability to look at a person, okay, and be able to know his character and his personality just by looking at him or just spending a little bit of time with him. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu used to say there was three people that perfected firasa, okay? They showed perfection in their firasa on three different occasions. The first of them was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. When on his deathbed, he chose Umar radiallahu anhu to be the next Khalifa, the next ruler. And obviously when you study the biography of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and we see what Umar radiallahu anhu accomplished and how he helped Islam and how he supported this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we read all of this, then we see the farsightedness of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that indeed Umar radiallahu anhu was the right man for this job. So the first of them was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he chose Umar to be the next Khalifa. The other one is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, okay? And that is when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he flees from Egypt and he ends up in Madian, and he waters the flock of the two sisters, and one of them then goes back to her father, and she says, Ya abat ista'ajir, oh my dear father, hire this man, okay, referring to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Why? She says, Inna khayra man ista'jartal qawiyul amin. The best person you can hire, or you should hire, is the one who is strong and the one who is trustworthy. This is the best person you should hire. He should be number one, qualified, and number two, he should be trustworthy. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, Musa alayhi salam, we know was very, very strong. Even though he had traveled and he ran from Egypt and he was tired and he was exhausted, but when he saw that these two sisters were not able to give water to their animals because there were men around and they were restraining and keeping back their animals, he saw this was a form of oppression, and he needed to help those who were oppressed. So even though he's so tired and exhausted, he helps these two sisters and he helps them water their flocks. And it is said that on top of the well there was the cover, and on top of the cover there was a huge boulder. And usually it would be the men who would move the boulder. Okay, women were not able to move it. It was very heavy. And usually it would take several men to move the stone. But Musa alayhi salatu wasalam came and single-handedly, he just moved the whole stone. And we know he was very strong. In fact, the very reason why he ran from Egypt was because of the incident. When he comes to the person, the Israelite, and he sees that obviously he's always into arguments, he wanted to correct him, and he wanted to just kind of hit him. His intention was not to do anything more. Right? And unintentionally, when he hits him, فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. As soon as he hits him, he punches him, and obviously he's so powerful that as soon as he hits him, that's it, the person is dead on the ground. But obviously this was done unintentionally. His intention was not to kill him. So he was very strong, and Al-Amin, he was also trustworthy. So that was the second person. And the third person who showed depth of firasa was this person, Al-Aziz. When he told his wife, when he looked at Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he saw something in him. And he says to her, Akrimi mathwa, take good care of him, make his stay comfortable, perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a son. It's interesting to note that this is also the same statement that is mentioned by the wife of Fir'aun when she picks up Musa alayhi salatu wasalam from the Nile River. And what does she say? قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ. He's the coolness of my eyes. Do not kill him. Why? عَسَىٰ أَن يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا. Perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a child. And that is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas. Surah Al-Qasas is a story that talks about Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. It's the surah that talks about the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. And I saw a lot of similarities between these two surahs. A lot of similarities, and also some very interesting differences. And I will just go over some of them. It's kind of related to this part. As I mentioned in the beginning of this surah, that this is the only surah in the Quran which has one long story as its main theme. There is no other surah of this size that has one long story as its main theme from beginning to the end. However, of all the surahs that come very close to this surah is Surah Al-Qasas. Surah Al-Qasas is also very similar to Surah Yousuf in this regard. It's also pretty long. It's more than half a juz, just like Surah Yousuf, but Surah Yousuf being a bit longer. And almost like Surah Yousuf, more than half of it, it talks about the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam from beginning till the end, from childhood till adulthood. Okay? And both of them are very interesting because both surahs, they talk about two great prophets. Prophets from where? From Bani Israel. One is Yusuf alayhi salam, the other one is Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Both of them are separated from their parents, from their relatives, from their loved ones at a very tender and young age. Okay? Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Both of them are separated. And both of them, they end up in very dangerous conditions or in a very dangerous situation. Okay? Both of them end up basically in water. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he ends up in the Nile River, and Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he ends up in the well. Both of them are thrown into this condition by their loved ones. Okay? But the difference is, in the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, it is due to hatred and jealousy by the brothers. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it is done out of love and protection for the child. Okay? In both of these cases, the parents, they are grieved. But in the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, the emphasis on the father. There's no mention of the mother. The father is the one who becomes blind out of his love for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. In the case of Musa alayhi salam, in Surah Al-Qasas, the emphasis is on the mother. There's no mention of the father. وَأَصْبَحَ فُؤَادُ إِمُّ مُوسَى فَارِغًا. And then, both of them, where do they end up? They end up in the house. They end up in Egypt, and they end up in the house of a prominent person in Egypt. In the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he ends up in the house of Al-Aziz, the minister. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he ends up in the palace of Fir'aun. And then the way they end up is also very unique, very interesting. It is not that they go willingly to the house of the minister or the palace of Fir'aun. In the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he's forced due to circumstances. He's thrown into the well, and then he's picked up, and eventually he's sold into slavery in Egypt, and Al-Aziz purchases him. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he also ends up there. Not willingly, but he's placed in a basket, and the basket, it makes its way all the way to the palace of Fir'aun. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it is Al-Aziz, the husband, who purchases Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and says to his wife, take good care of him, and says this phrase, perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a son. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it's the other way around. Who is the one who picks up Musa alayhi salam? It is the wife, and then she tells her husband, don't kill him, perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a child. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, or in the case of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he is the one who brings Bani Israel into Egypt. Okay? But Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he is the one who takes Bani Israel out of Egypt. Remember, how does Bani Israel, how do they end up in Egypt? Because of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay? In fact, because of this very story. They actually lived in Canaan, or what we would call modern day Palestine, but he's sold into slavery. He ends up in Egypt, in the house of Al-Aziz. Later on in the story, then he brings his family into Egypt. They stay there, their children, they also grow up over there, and after a few centuries, then they are oppressed and they're enslaved by a tyrant person known as Pharaoh. And then Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is sent, and he's the one who frees Bani Israel. He takes them out of Egypt. Another interesting difference or similarity between the story of Musa and Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam is, in the story of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, it mentions the type of relationship between a man and a woman that is not allowed, that is prohibited. Okay, we know, and we'll come to that point where the wife of Al-Aziz tries to tempt Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But in the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it mentions the relationship of a man and a woman that is allowed. Okay, where Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is married to one of the two daughters of the man who's in Madian, some say which is Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salatu wasalam, and basically this is through nikah, the relationship, the type of relationship that is allowed. In the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, in the case of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he's thrown into prison without any reason. Okay, he's innocent, totally innocent, and he ends up in prison. But in the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, it's the other way around, that he actually killed a person accidentally. It is not a crime, it is not a sin, but still some action was taking place and he was not in prison. So if you look at it, there's a lot of, and it goes on and on and on, there's a lot of similarities and also some very slight differences between the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and the story of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, Surah Yousuf, it is in the 12th juz, Surah Al-Qasas, it is in the 20th juz. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And this is how we established Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam in the land. How? Once he's thrown into the well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused the caravan to come by, pick him up. He was sold into slavery, and it caused Al-Aziz to pass by, saw Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and purchased him. Okay, this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, by providing him with the best and generous host. If Allah had willed, some other person could have picked up Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam. He could have ended up working in a field. He could have ended up doing some hard labor. Even if he would have ended up in the house of a wealthy person, but not a political figure, he would have not been established in the land. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had willed that Al-Aziz is the one who purchases Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and he grows up in his house. وَلِنُعَلِّمَهُ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And so that we may teach him the interpretation of events. وَاللَّهُ غَالِبٌ عَلَى أَمْرِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has full control over his affairs. But وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most of mankind do not know. And this is a very important phrase we need to keep in mind. Allah has full control over all of his affairs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate control of everything. We don't control everything. Yes, we have some very limited free will, but at the end, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is in control of the bigger picture. He is the ultimate control of everything. And there's a story that once in the time of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, there was this person who came to him. And this was a person who was an atheist. Okay, and he had three questions, or rather three objections. And we know that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was very good in refuting people's arguments, especially those who are atheists and agnostics. Allah had blessed him with a lot of hikmah and wisdom and knowledge. So this person, he comes to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah as he's sitting with his students in the halaqah, and he says, and he raises these three objections. He says, number one, he said, you believe that shaitan is going to be punished. But he said, how is this possible? Shaitan is made out of fire, and hellfire is nothing but fire. So how can fire actually affect fire? How does this make any sense? Okay. He says, number two, I don't believe in God. Okay. He's an atheist. He said, I don't believe in God. Why? I can't perceive him through any of my five senses. Okay. I cannot see him. I cannot smell him. I cannot hear him. I cannot taste him. I cannot touch him. Because I cannot sense him through any of my five senses, therefore, I don't believe in the existence of God. And then number three, he says that, unlike what the ayah says, Allah is in control of everything. He says, no, I'm in full control of everything. Allah does not decide, obviously first he didn't even believe in God, but he says, suppose it does exist, I'm in full control of everything I do. Not Allah, not God. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, it is said that he took, some clay that was hardened, okay, hard clay, basically it was almost like a rock. And he took it and he hit the person with it. So obviously when the person, when he was hit by the rock, he immediately went and he complained to the Khalifa or to the Qadi, and he says, people claim that this person is such a knowledgeable person and such a wise person. I asked him 3 simple questions, he felt embarrassed, couldn't answer them, and this is how he retaliated. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was summoned to court and he was asked, for the reason of why he hit the person. He said, no, I was just only answering. He asked 3 questions, so I was just answering his objections. He says, how? He said, okay, he asked the person, he said, what were your questions? He says, number 1, how can shaitan actually feel pain when he's made out of fire, and hellfire is nothing but fire? He said, well, you also believe that human beings are created from clay. This is not just the belief of Muslims, everyone believes in this, that human beings are created from clay. Okay, we can prove this even scientifically. How? When a person dies and the body is buried in the ground and it is decomposed, we know it turns into dust and dirt. The fact that it turns into dust and dirt is a proof that in the very beginning, it was also dust and dirt in the very first place. Okay, the fact that it turns into dust and dirt shows that in the beginning it must have also been dust and dirt. That's just a scientific approach. Obviously, we don't need that. We believe as believers, we believe in the Quran that we are created from dust and dirt. So anyway, even scientists, they believe in this, that we are created from clay. So he said, what I hit you with was also made out of clay. It was obviously of a different degree. It was hardened, but it was the same thing. You were hit with it. Now, how can you claim that you are feeling pain? Because you were hit with the same substance. Okay, and this led to the second point. You're claiming that you're feeling pain, but how can I actually know that it's true? Because I can't perceive it through any of my 5 senses. You're claiming that you're going through pain, but I can't see the pain, I can't hear the pain, I can't smell the pain, I can't taste the pain, I can't even feel the pain. The fact that I can't sense it through any of my 5 senses probably means that it doesn't even exist. You're just making a claim. There's no proof to substantiate your claim. And number 3, you're saying that you are in full control of everything. Okay? Allah is not in control of everything. Allah is not the one who is the ultimate controller who arranges everything. You are saying that you are in full control of everything. He said, well, when I hit you with the rock, at that time, were you upset? Did you get angry? Did you want to retaliate? Did you want to do something? He said, yeah, of course. He said, why didn't you do anything? He said, obviously you had all of the students around you. That wasn't a very wise thing to do. So I went to the Qadi and I, filed a complaint against you. So he said, okay, here, you had a certain decision. You wanted to retaliate. You wanted to do something. That was your intention. That was your wish. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had willed something else. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was in control of everything. This was your intention. You wanted to do something right there and then. But it was out of your control. Because it was already arranged and planned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You had some plans, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a bigger plan. Wallahu ghalibun ala amri. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in full control of His affairs. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most of mankind, most of people do not know. And this tells us that you shouldn't just always follow the majority. Don't just always follow the crowd. Because Allah says in the Quran, أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most of people do not know. Okay? Especially on many different issues. People say, well, just follow the majority, just follow the crowd. Okay? Just to be a little bit more practical, I'll just use this as an example. When it comes to moon sighting, the moon sighting issue, many times the main point that people raise is that, well, most of the people are doing it this way. Okay, everyone can be wrong. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Okay, this cannot always be used as a proof. Most of people don't know. أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Most of people do not believe. أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. Most of people are not grateful. وَإِن تَتَّبِعْ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you are to follow most of people on earth, they will misguide you and lead you astray. So this is not good enough point that, well, most of people are doing it, just follow the crowd. No, you have to follow what is right. Okay? As Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu used to say, الْجَمَاعَةُ حَقٌّ وَلَوْ كَانَ فَرْدًا وَاحِدًا. The majority is to follow the truth, even if it may just be one person. When it comes to truth and falsehood, then you have to follow the truth, even if it is just the minority. Okay, don't just follow the crowd. Yes, when there's two, acceptable positions, okay, and both of them are valid, then in this case, yes, you should go with the majority. It's better you go with the majority, and you should go with the majority. But if it is, the battle is between truth and haqq and batil, truth and falsehood, then you don't look at which side has the majority. Then you stick with the truth. Okay, and this is one of the reasons. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Most of people, they do not know. Let's move on inshallah to ayah number 22. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ شُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. And when he reached his full powers, we gave him حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. Hukm, and we gave him knowledge. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And in this manner, we reward the doers of good. Okay? By the way, this is another similarity and also somewhat of a difference between the story of Musa alayhi salam and the story of Yousuf alayhi salam. Because this is the same phrase that is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, very similar. In Surah Al-Qasas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ شُدَّهُ وَاسْتَوَى آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. We gave him knowledge and we gave him wisdom, and this is how we reward the doers of good. That's the similarity. The difference is, over there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala adds one more word. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ شُدَّهُ. When he reached maturity, وَاسْتَوَى, and he became strong, okay? And he became very powerful. When we know Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he was known for his physical strength. So the extra word is added, وَاسْتَوَى. But not in the case of Yousuf alayhi salam. Because Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam was known for something else, and that was for his beauty. So Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam was known for beauty, and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was known for his physical strength. So over there, the ayah is very similar, but for those of you who are huffaz, who you memorize the Quran, this is something of benefit, because when you read, sometimes you jump from one place to the other because of the mutashabihat, the similarities. Over there is, the word wastawa is used, and that is because Musa alayhi salatu wasalam physically is very, very strong. But in the case of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, that word is not there, perhaps because obviously Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam is not known with this quality. What he is known for was beauty. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ شُدَّهُ. When he reached his ashud. Now ashud could be anywhere from 18 to 40. Okay, it's not a reference to 1 or 2 or 3 years. Anywhere from 18 to 40 is ashud. According to some of the mufassirin, specifically over here, Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam was about 30 years of age. And some say that no, he was either 19, some say 20, some say 22. But anyway, it is between 18 to 40. When he reached his full powers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا. We gave him hukman. Okay, what is hukman? It can have one of two meanings, and both of them are valid. Hukman, one meaning is, we gave him authority. Like, in al-hukmu illa lillah. We gave him authority, we gave him power. And we see that at the end, Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he is given the position of the Minister of Finance. He becomes Al-Aziz. So we gave him authority. Another meaning is hikmah, okay, from wisdom. So we gave him wisdom, wa ilma, we gave him knowledge. What's the difference between the two? What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Knowledge is basic information. It is just data. Hikmah is when you know how to apply that information. You know how to use that knowledge. You know how to use it, when to use it, who to give that information to, how much of that information to give to people. So that is wisdom. You need both. One without the other is incomplete. Only when you have both, you would have a completion. Because if you have wisdom, you have no knowledge, then what are you going to give to people? And if you have knowledge, but no wisdom, again, it is useless. You need to have both. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when he reached his ashud, we gave him hukman and we gave him knowledge. And according to Mufassirun, that here knowledge, in the case of Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, refers to prophethood. Because the ultimate knowledge for a prophet is to receive revelation and wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And in this manner, we reward the doers of good. Okay? Muhsin means one who is exceptionally righteous and pious. Okay? Muhsinin is the plural of the word muhsin. One who practices ihsan is called a muhsin. Just like the person who practices Islam is called a Muslim. The one who has iman is called a mu'min. And I want to quickly, inshallah, talk a little bit about this, because this word actually occurs repeatedly in the Quran, and specifically in this surah, the word muhsin is used for Yousuf alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was a muhsin. He was of the muhsinin. We need to understand this concept, and this is very beautifully and very succinctly mentioned in the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, it's a famous hadith, and that hadith became known as hadith of Jibreel because Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam was the one who came to Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam and explained these three concepts. Very quickly, I'll go over that hadith. It's a very famous hadith. It is mentioned in Arba'in al-Nawawi. And again, this is not the time to go into all the details, but because the word muhsin is here, I'm just going to talk about it. That Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, after he performed Hajjatul Wida', he performed his farewell Hajj. When he was coming back to Medina, he stationed at a place. He was with the Sahaba. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu is the one who narrates the incident. He says, بينما نحن جلوس عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر لا يرى عليه أثر الصف ولا يعرفه منا أحد. That we were sitting with the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم when suddenly a person appeared before Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم who was wearing clothes that were extremely white and his hair was completely black. There was no signs that this person was a traveler. Okay? Because of the way he was dressed, there was no dirt or dust on his clothes. But at the same time, he could have not been a resident of Medina because none of us recognized him. So he couldn't have been a traveler and he couldn't have been a resident of Medina. So some strange person appeared and he sat in front of the Prophet ﷺ and he connected his knees with the knees of the Prophet ﷺ. Just like a student when he sits in front of his teacher with adab and respect. And then he asked him the famous questions. What is Islam? What is Iman? And what is Ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ answered each one. And every time the Prophet would answer, he would say, Sadaqta, you have spoken the truth. And Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, we found this even strange, even more strange, that he would ask the question and then he would verify it. And he said, yes, you have spoken the truth. So when he asked about Islam, the Prophet ﷺ told him about the 5 pillars of Islam. When he asked about Iman, Rasul ﷺ told him about the articles of faith, believe in Allah and the angels and the rest. And when he asked him about Ihsan, Rasul ﷺ said, Ihsan is, you worship Allah as if you're seeing Him. And if you cannot see Him, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. And then he asked about Qiyamah and the signs of the Day of Judgment. And finally, at the end, when the person left, Rasul ﷺ asked the Sahaba, Atadruna man sa'il? Do you know who the questioner was? So the Sahaba said, no, Ya Rasulullah. And it is said Umar ibn Khattab was told to go and look for him. When he went, he could not find this person. And the Rasul then told the Sahaba, هَذَا جِبْرِيلٌ أَتَاكُمْ يُعَلِّمَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. This was Jibreel alayhi salam who came to you to teach you your religion. This was towards the end of the Prophet ﷺ's life, and basically the whole Islam was basically summarized into these 3 concepts: Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. What is Islam? Islam basically means that you do the bare minimum. Okay? You do the 5 pillars of Islam. You take the Shahada, you're a Muslim, and then after that, you pray the 5 salahs every day and nothing more. All you do is you pray your 5 salahs, that's it, nothing more. You fast in the month of Ramadan, 29 or 30 days in a year, and not a single day extra. You give your zakat, you 2.5%, and not a penny more. You perform Hajj once in your lifetime, if you're able to, physically and financially, and never again. Okay, that's it. This is Islam. You just do the bare minimum. Pray your 5 salahs, you give your zakat, fast, perform Hajj. Then you have Iman, which is a level higher than Islam. That not only do you just say the kalima shahada when you accept Islam, but then you continuously do the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You say La ilaha illallah and you say the shahada. Constantly, you're always doing the dhikr of Allah. You don't just limit yourself to the 5 salahs, but you also perform tahajjud. You pray extra qiyam, you fast, you perform extra salahs, you perform salat al-duha, and you do all the extra nafil prayers. You don't just only fast in the month of Ramadan, but you fast Mondays and Thursdays, or perhaps 3 days of every month. You don't just give 2.5% of your wealth, but you give some extra voluntary charity as well. You give sadaqah besides the zakat. You don't just only perform Hajj, but you also once in a while, when you have the opportunity, you perform other umrahs and you perform extra nafil Hajj. This is Islam and Iman. It's easier to understand this. Okay? Basically, Iman is simply that you do more. It's basically quantity. But when it comes to Ihsan, it's that you're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 24/7, all of the time. Okay? You're worshipping Allah all of the time, 24/7. Now a person may ask the question, how is this possible? How can you worship Allah 24/7? That is only the state of the angels. That they're constantly in ruku', they're constantly in sujood, they're constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how we as weak human beings worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 24/7? And this is basically the unique thing about the muhsin. What he does is that he converts even the normal things that the other person does into an act of worship. How so? When he does something, he remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He mentions the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he does it with the intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For instance, when he goes to sleep, he's going to sleep for 7-8 hours, mashallah. But when he goes to sleep, he sleeps according to the sunnah, he makes wudu, he recites the dua, and he sleeps with the intention that when I wake up, I want to be rejuvenated, I want to be energized, so the next day I'm able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way or even better. Okay? When he eats, he recites the dua with the intention that when he eats, obviously he needs to nourish his body so that he can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same thing goes on with everything else. So basically, a muhsin, he converts the normal acts that a person does into acts of worship. Even when he goes to work, he's working for 8, 9 hours, 10 hours, okay? With the intention that, obviously, I need to provide for my family. You know, kasbi halal, this is also part of this deen, to earn a halal livelihood. And therefore, I need to provide for my family. This is also a responsibility upon me. I would have worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all day, but obviously I have to take care of my family. This is also a responsibility from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he does it with that intention. As long as the work he's doing is halal, and he does it with this intention, even the 8 hours that he's doing this would be turned into ibadah, into worship, or in other words, he'll be rewarded for this. So he's 24/7, he's worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even when he goes to the bathroom, you know there is also etiquette of using the bathroom. When you enter with your left foot. When you come out with the right foot. There's a dua that you recite. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. Oh Allah, I seek refuge in you from the male and female jinns, from filth and impurity. When you come out, you recite a dua. So constantly you're always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When Aisha radiallahu anha said, كَانَ يَذْكُرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ حَانٍ. He used to remember Allah every moment of his life. What that means is that anything new he would do, he always remember Allah. When he eats, when he drinks, when he meets, anything he does, he's always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a muhsin is constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the meaning of the hadith. أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. You worship Allah as if you're seeing Allah. And if you cannot see Him, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you. In other words, you're always constantly thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're always conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously this has many different levels. Okay, there are some people that are more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than others. But the more you are, the more you'll be able to avoid sins. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.